Picture this, a symbolic clock ticking steadily closer to midnight, a midnight that stands for the end of civilization as we know it. Every tick resonates with nuclear threats, climate disasters, and the emergence of new, potentially devastating technologies. This isn't a sci-fi movie. It's reality. It's the Doomsday Clock, and it currently stands at a mere 89 seconds to midnight. Why does this clock even exist? Who sets its time? And most importantly, how close are we really to global catastrophe? Stick with us as we decode the extraordinary history of the Doomsday Clock, the controversies shrouding it, and the shocking truth behind humanity's own countdown to doomsday. Welcome to Mysteries Decoders, the channel where we uncover the secrets the world doesn't want you to know. In today's episode, the Doomsday Clock. How close are we to midnight? We examine the unsettling symbol that governments, scientists, and world leaders can't ignore. Our story begins in the aftermath of World War II, when humankind first harnessed the destructive power of the atomic bomb. In 1945, scientists who had worked on the Manhattan Project at the University of Chicago founded the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, their mission to inform the public about the dangers of nuclear weapons and other emerging threats. Two key figures emerged in the first issues of the Bulletin: Hyman Goldsmith, a co-editor of the Bulletin, who saw the need for a striking visual representation to communicate urgency, and Eugene Rabinowitch, a Russian-American physicist, co-founder of the Bulletin, and the individual responsible for deciding when and by how much the clock's hands moved until his death in 1973. In June 1947, Goldsmith commissioned an artist named Martil Langsdorff to design a cover for the Bulletin's first magazine issue. She created the now iconic design, a clock set at 7 minutes to midnight. Although the specific time was said to be partly for aesthetic reasons, it powerfully conveyed the urgency that these scientists felt regarding the threat of nuclear war. It's nearly impossible to talk about how the Doomsday Clock came into being without mentioning Albert Einstein's pivotal role. As one of the Bulletin's founding members, Einstein notably encouraged the United States to harness and understand the enormous power of atomic energy. Yet, in the aftermath of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he voiced deep remorse for how scientific progress had facilitated such destruction. By working closely with the Bulletin, Einstein helped make the Doomsday Clock a global symbol of humanity's existential challenges. His perspective, the unleashed power of the atom has changed everything save our modes of thinking, still rings eerily true today. Shortly after the 1947 debut, events in global politics quickly tested the clock's purpose. In 1949, the Soviet Union tested its first atomic bomb, erasing any illusions of a permanent US nuclear monopoly. Eugene Rabinowitch then made his first definitive move, shifting the clock from 7 minutes to 3 minutes to midnight. The world found itself well along a precarious path, stumbling into an arms race that defined the next several decades. Thus, a new ritual was established. Each year, experts from the Bulletin would convene to debate whether humanity inched closer to or further away from global catastrophe. A somber tradition, but one designed to keep the public informed about the ticking dangers. The Cold War era is often marked by an undercurrent of dread surrounding nuclear annihilation. Naturally, the Doomsday Clock's shifts during those decades reflected that tension. The closest it had been set to midnight during much of the 20th century was 2 minutes to midnight in 1953, following the testing of the hydrogen bomb first by the US and then by the Soviet Union. During these decades, nuclear stockpiling soared. Treaties such as the Limited Test Ban Treaty of 1963 and the first strategic arms limitations in 1972 provided rays of hope, occasionally nudging the clock backward. In fact, in 1972, it moved to 12 minutes to midnight, a symbolic recognition that perhaps world leaders could steer humanity away from destruction. But optimism proved fleeting. As tensions re-escalated in the late 1970s and early 1980s, amid events like the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan or heightened skepticism toward arms control, those clock hands crept ominously forward again. In a near-miraculous turn of events, the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 paved the way for a moment of collective relief. Nuclear stockpiles were no longer growing at breakneck speed, and new arms control treaties like START offered real progress. Marking this hopeful milestone, the Bulletin moved the clock to 17 minutes to midnight, the farthest it has ever been from global catastrophe. Yet, can sudden optimism blind us to lingering dangers? It's a question worth asking, not just about history, but about the periods of relative calm we might experience today. The euphoria of the early 1990s proved short-lived, as 9/11s introduced new dimensions of vulnerability: terrorism and the possibility of rogue actors wielding nuclear or biological materials. By the mid-2000s, countries like North Korea and Iran reignited nuclear anxieties. Meanwhile, climate change became another recognized existential threat. In 2007, the Bulletin officially factored in climate change when setting the clock's hands, stating that catastrophic environmental breakdown can be just as devastating as nuclear war. Simultaneously, new disruptive technologies such as cyber weapons and advanced bioengineering emerged, spurring further concern. Some existential risks like pandemics or extreme AI developments could theoretically tip the planet into chaos. Do you think these newer risks overshadow nuclear threats today, or do we underestimate the power of both? It's 2025. The Doomsday Clock now glares at 89 seconds to midnight, closer to oblivion than ever before. 1. Terrifying. 2. Closer. Why? Because humanity's dance with disaster has turned lethal. A devastating war over Ukraine, an unstoppable proliferation, and cities drown in floods and devastated by fires. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists calls it a convergence of doom, but not everyone's buying it. Critics roar that the Bulletin's playing a dangerous game. Why single out Russia while China's nukes multiply in silence? Why scream about climate collapse but whisper about India and Pakistan's ticking time bomb? Conservative firebrands mock it as apocalypse theatre, accusing eggheads in lab coats of fear-mongering to push green agendas. Even Harvard's Steven Pinker scoffs. Scaring people into sanity is like lighting a fuse to blow out a candle. Why 89 seconds? Who decided? The Bulletin claims months of agonizing debate among Nobel laureates. But where's the math, the formula, the proof? They note that the Science and Security Board does not publicly detail how much weight each global event carries, leaving the yearly decision process shrouded in mystery and open to interpretation. Without a concrete formula, detractors say, it's difficult to assess whether the time adjustments are consistent or overly subjective. Is a strong scare tactic sometimes necessary to overcome global complacency? Or do we risk losing trust in the process? Critics argue that the Doomsday Clock can be used to advance specific political viewpoints rather than offering a purely neutral reading of existential threats. Do you view the clock as a neutral scientific gauge of humanity's dangers, or can it be hijacked for political purposes? Beneath the shadow of nuclear brinkmanship, climate chaos swallowing cities, and AI systems spiraling beyond control, the Doomsday Clock doesn't just tick, it screams humanity's self-made countdown to oblivion. Is the Doomsday Clock effectively raising awareness about our most pressing risks? Or is it sowing fear? Should we trust an interdisciplinary team to measure existential dangers, or is that placing too much power in too few hands? What do you see as our greatest danger? Nuclear war, climate collapse, AI, or something else entirely? Let us know in the comments below. We want to know what you think about humanity's ticking countdown. If you enjoyed decoding the mysteries of the Doomsday Clock, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Mysteries Decoders. Our community of inquisitive minds is only growing, and your voice is vital. Spread the word, share this video with your friends, your skeptical colleagues and family members. Who knows what we'll decode next? Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay curious, stay questioning, and stay tuned to Mysteries Decoders.